thanks for coming along to our talk today. It's great to be here and have you in the room. So first of all, I'd just like to introduce you to Cam. So Cam is a security solutions specialist, and I've known Cam for a while, and I've also had the pleasure of working with him as well. And I can tell you he's really got a passion for making security accessible for everyone. And he gives to the InfoSec community through contributing at SecTalks. So he's one of the co-organisers of the Toowoomba SecTalks group, and also participating in other industry forums and business forums as well.
Thanks, JP. And I'd like to introduce you to JP. JP introduced me to cybersecurity. He was the founding member of SecTalks in Toowoomba, and is a real security evangelist / coffee evangelist. He can tell you about the current threat landscape, can talk shop with you about the latest vulnerabilities, and he can take you to school and show you what a real coffee's like. He's ruined instant coffee for me. I'm sorry, JP is always happy to teach others his craft, and he's helped many through the community, including myself, to learn about cybersecurity and technology in general. So we both love tech and cybersecurity, and we both have kids, and that brings us to this talk and probably gives you a bit of an insight about why we've prepared it.
Thanks, Cam. Yeah, making me blush a bit. So I had this idea percolating, there's a coffee pun there, in my head for a while, that a talk like this would be a good thing to do. And where it came from is I'd had discussions with other parents that are kind of in our wider group, and I kind of realised that they weren't really aware of some of the dangers of having their kids online. And so I thought it might be a good idea to talk about that a little bit. And I also thought it might be good to give them some tools to help deal with those risks. And I kind of thought that crowdsourcing this and open sourcing it would be a good way to spread this a little bit further than what I could do myself. So we decided to do it that way.
Yeah, so when JP told me about the idea, we worked together and to run a session with our local SecTalks group. It was really interesting because ordinarily we get a fairly regular group to that, and for this particular session we advertised it, and we got a really diverse, large group who obviously saw that advertised and thought it was something that appealed to them. It was really nice to see and meet those people as well, because, like I said, not really the ordinary crowd that we get. And so we started with some high-level themes from the E-Safety Commissioner's website, which we kind of used to build the structure for everyone to focus on. And then made some group decisions about the highest impacting themes, and started researching. So we wanted a talk that was not technical and vendor neutral. So it needed to be aimed at parents and caregivers so they could get value from that and easily implement some recommendations to protect their kids.
So it took some time to actually communicate the idea of what we're doing and get the logistics of it all worked out. So as I'm sure a lot of you know, online meetings can be hard work, and trying to run this online through COVID was a bit challenging as well. But we ran it on WebEx. We were able to split it out into separate groups to tackle the separate topics. One of the barriers that we came up with, we thought that Git would be a good way to collaborate and build the information, the research, and the presentation. But because we had such a diverse crowd, it was quite a high barrier to entry for people that hadn't used it before. So we ended up switching into Google Docs and doing a lot of work in there, which worked really well. And so once we got past those technical hurdles, it was just head down. Everyone was working hard, and it really was a thing of beauty. And we managed to pull it together and get a presentation out of it. So thanks for coming to the talk today. Here is the presentation that has been crowdsourced. to help keep our kids online, safe online. So this is where you're going to go and put in all the details about yourself and how you kind of fit into the picture. And this slide here covers a little bit of the background that we've covered off as well around where this talk has come from.
And I just wanted to actually point out that the purpose behind this is for people who, in this community, that have been asked to talk about cyber safety for kids, can go and grab this talk and use it themselves. Definitely. So that's why we've kind of made it like this. So yeah, let's go. So the internet and everything connected to it has changed our world in so many ways, for good and for the not so good. We're having to help our children navigate through the new cyber world. We're pioneers in the digital age. And the divide between the internet and real life means that many people are happy to adopt behaviours online that are completely inappropriate, but the promise of anonymity emboldens them and to act in ways that they would never even consider in real life. Our world is becoming a global village, and more every day. The metaverse will shrink those boundaries further, and amongst these rapid changes, our children have unprecedented access to online experiences.
So the main issues that we need to protect our kids from are fairly varied, but we'll go over some of these today. So we'll talk about the impact that too much time online can have for our kids. We're going to talk about how games can be fun, but there's also a darker side to those games, about how bullying has changed since many parents were at school. And you might also be surprised at how common sexting or sending nudes is amongst younger adults and children as well. Exposure to pornography is occurring at much younger ages and causing long and lasting impacts. And we'll also look at what can happen when kids make new friends online, friends, and cover off some of those things as well. So just spending time online can impact kids, especially younger kids, in a number of different ways. And this can be from social aspects, academic aspects, and also physically as well. Perhaps it will manifest itself as anger, so kids getting upset when you're telling them to come off the device or stop playing that game, or anger when they're not allowed to play that game, or spend time on Facebook and things like that. Kids can also become obsessed about certain online activities such as games and apps and things like that, and can really become hyper-focused and kind of oblivious to what's happening in the real world. They just zone right out. And often that obsession can spill over into real life. They're fully focused on the game, and then you get them off the computer, and they're still talking about it on and on and on and on. Forgot to click the too much talking. There we go.
So often by this stage, parents can zone out. They can be switched off. And that's why it's important for us to be focused on the way that algorithms are moving in tendencies to keep our content more and more extreme, to keep our attention. Whilst the verdict is still out, many suggest that extremist content is more easily delivered to those that are vulnerable and more susceptible to this type of content. So whilst exposure to belief systems can increase tolerance, empathy and acceptance of others, some of the content takes it too far. Time online can also reinforce behaviours. We've talked a bit about poor attitude and exposure to belief systems that conflict with those of the parents. But time online can also increase risk-taking. Kids, of course, will need to take risks, but they're often willing to take increased risks just so they can get their video on social media. So online gaming, while positive and great fun, comes with its share of dangers. It's easy for kids to connect to their friends and play together online. The ability to meet and interact socially can have some really positive effects. However, while it's easy for kids to connect to friends, it's also easy to connect to strangers. Drop a couple of $100 on a game, in-game currency, or post or receive pictures and videos. So it's easy for a carefree game session to quickly become loaded with stress and anxiety, especially with the distance of peer pressure over in-game performance can take on particularly toxic traits, especially with the distance and anonymity afforded by the internet. This is a common root cause of cyberbullying. So obviously, in-game comm channels can be abused for darker purposes as well. These channels are commonly targeted by sexual predators. This is a common trend of game platforms emerging that enables the users to create their own content, such as Roblox. And while this is great and encourages creativity, it also means that there is a channel there that is not guarded by authorities, and they're not able to manage the content. And quite often our kids are being subjected to content that we may not be happy about, or that they shouldn't really be seeing. And unfortunately, the controls to take care of that are quite reactive. So by the time they've seen it, the damage is already done.
So as discussed, gaming can include aspects of cyberbullying, and I'm sure many of us have experienced bullying in some form when we were younger, either as a target, as a bully, or through observing this behaviour. But in my opinion, the difference between then and now is around two key aspects. So one of those is the 24/7 nature of bullying. So, it used to be that you'd be at school and then you go home, you get a break from the bully, whereas now that can be quite constant for kids, being bullied online through text messages and chats and things like that. And as Cam's already said, a lot of people are more comfortable saying things online than they would be if they're saying it to your face. So, it makes bullying a little bit crueler, and this can lead to increased stress, anxiety, depression, things like that. And these often have long recovery times and can have a lasting impact. And it's also worth considering the amount of time that some of these things can live for online and how hard it is to remove some of that content. Cyberbullying can take different forms. There are many different ones. So harassment is one. So this is where people are posting mean things online or sending mean text messages or chat messages, spreading rumours, that kind of thing. We've got things like impersonation, where somebody will create a profile that looks like your child's, or an account or a screen name that's similar. It could also be that somebody's stolen your child's phone, either taken it or borrowed it while it's been unlocked, and then that gives them access to change things on their profile. And also things like stealing passwords and things like that can cause issues. Video shaming is one where you're posting content online that's designed to embarrass people. You might bait them into a situation that's an artificial situation and film their reaction to it to try and embarrass them. And there's other subtle methods as well. Where a comment might be made in a group chat and everybody knows who we were talking about, but it's not actually said explicitly. So it's kind of real subtle there. And also there's situations where groups of friends will get together and they'll exclude other people in their friendship group, maybe just one or two, out of that main chat group. And oftentimes they don't even realise.
So moving on to one that scares the hell out of me, being a parent. So while I'm sure the thought of our children growing up and entering relationships is a scary thought for many parents, it's a reality of life. And supporting this natural progression is challenging at the best of times. But we all know the overprotective father trope, and it comes with its fair share of nuances and implications. But it's also a protection that is afforded to us that is not available on the internet, especially when your children are communicating in an unrestricted fashion. It only takes seconds to make a decision where that could impact the rest of your life, just posting that one photo. And that's why it's important for us to be openly talking with our kids about the dangers involved. There's a culture that sexting and sending nudes is a regular part of relationships, and especially amongst teens. And that can be used as a pressure technique to persuade someone else to share pictures that they may not necessarily be comfortable sharing. I'm sure that most kids understand the taboo nature of sending a nude picture of themselves to someone. They may not appreciate the potential consequences involved, though. So once a picture is on the internet, it's nigh on impossible to remove it completely. People use those images with malicious intent as well, including blackmail and cyberbullying. The repercussions can be long-lasting, with content that might have been long forgotten resurfacing years later. There's been numerous cases where cyberbullying has led to young people and old taking their own lives. So teaching kids about these things will give them the ammunition to fight back against peer pressure and give them the confidence to, in their decisions, to stand up for themselves.
Almost 70% of boys and 25% of girls will have been exposed to pornography by the time they are 13. Online pornography for children can be confusing and distressing, and it can cause them to be misled in how normal relationships might work. Children can be exposed to pornography in various ways, including actively searching for it. Perhaps they've heard something from a friend or a sibling and they're interested to find out more. Or perhaps that friend or sibling has actually shared that information with your child as well. They can come across pornography by accident, either through mistyping something into a search engine, clicking a link in a spam email or an ad pop-up. And free game websites can also oftentimes advertise pornographic content as well. And there's content that's designed for kids that sometimes has pornographic versions, and it isn't always clear when they're searching through the internet looking for these things. Most of the subjects we've covered up until now can lead to unwanted contact and onto grooming. This can result in children meeting strangers in real life or being tricked into providing images or recording activities that are inappropriate. Kids can be embarrassed to admit their new friend might not be as genuine as they first thought, and that means that they might not be ready to share their suspicions with you until it's too late.
So when I mentioned at the start of the talk that we are pioneers in the digital age, one of the things that comes to mind is that we're putting guardrails in place for the new generation. So 50 years ago, it was normal for kids to be tumbling around the back of a car with no seatbelts and no car seats. And now we would be mortified if that was happening. But that's just what's happening on the internet right now. So we're going through the steps of building that data as we grow into the internet and learning all these new lessons. And hopefully, as years go by, we will gather enough data that we'll be able to start making more informed decisions and take action, in the digital landscape. There's some key approaches that parents can take to better protect their children online. Number one, consider putting off giving your child a device for as long as possible. And when you do, put in boundaries and rules and make sure they know the expectations of using that device. Another thing is teaching your children about digital citizenship. So, what is digital citizenship? Teach your children to communicate responsibly. Remember, whatever goes online stays online. So are they actually saying something that they would be comfortable mum and dad saw? Or are they comfortable that maybe a future employer would see it? Be authentic online. We often see people who you're just seeing their highlight reel and only the good bits. You're not seeing the bad, the ugly, the real bits of their life. And your kids can get a distorted view of reality from that. Personal privacy, make sure you're keeping your details secure and not sharing them online. You wouldn't share it with somebody on the street, so definitely don't share your personal details online. It just makes life easier for the scammers and hackers of the world. And the damaging effects of someone stealing your identity can be catastrophic without it, so we don't want to make it any easier for them. And the last one, it's cool to be kind. As cheesy as that sounds, the internet can be used as a powerful tool to spread positive messages. And there's many examples of this in the real world where you can see how those messages can have really positive effects. And this ties back to being authentic as well. There's plenty of people out there who are just, putting on that act to get the views. But the real winners are the people who approach that with the genuine want to be good people on the internet as well as in real life.
Supervision can be hard, and you need to balance protecting your child and giving them the privacy and autonomy as they grow. If you can, starting early with these approaches will help your child understand those boundaries as they get older and be more responsible with their device and online usage. You can also actively engage in your child's online activities as well. So, for example, if your kid likes playing a particular game, then maybe join in on that game, and that can be some quality time that you spend together, but it also gives you a chance to understand what that game's about. You get to learn the lingo, and you can kind of keep an eye out for anything that's out of place. There are different ways to use software to protect your child, and Cam will cover some of these, but there's things like parental controls, but you can also implement things like ad blockers as well.
Yep, so there is a number of different important discussions and you should have with your child, but they can help, having discussions with your child can help you pick up on things like grooming, bullying, and often inappropriate behaviour. But there are other ways to proactively look out for your child and to monitor their online activities. Obviously, as your child gets older, there will be a need for you to think about the balance between privacy and protection, but that's a talk that's outside of the scope of this conversation. There are many pieces of software that can provide a generic ability to control what your child is doing online, and the apps that they're using, ensuring privacy settings are configured, limiting the people that can contact your children or add them as friends, etc. But one of the things I would highly encourage is using tools that come built in with so many different applications, like built-in privacy controls that come with Xbox, PlayStation, Microsoft, Google Family. They allow a more nuanced version of control so that your kids can still use the features that they're excited about on that platform, but you can lock down the features in a way that keeps them safe. Internet filtering services, they can be used to block unsavoury websites. Be aware though that they're not bulletproof and can be bypassed. Also be aware that while you might manage the applications that your child has access to, there are many ways to communicate outside of the ordinary stream of activity. For example, in-game chat. Obviously, in-game chat allows for a way for your kids to interact with people that they might not normally, you might not actually have a view of. So you have to, sometimes brute force can be a good way to go. You know, you can really clamp down and look for every little interaction they're having. But sometimes education could actually be the balance that you need in teaching your kids that, hey, this is how, you know, the kinds of things that you need to look for, and then hopefully have better communications with your children. Check in regularly as well. Ensure any unknown contacts are deleted and any inappropriate contacts are reported. Spend some time with your kids and make sure that they understand the difference between online people and real people, and how to critically think about what they're presented with online.
So throughout our research, the E-Safety Commissioner website came up as a great resource for parents, kids and teens, and it covers a lot of the issues associated with being online. And we'd recommend that you look at the information that's provided by the E-Safety Commissioner and the resources that they have on there that are tailored for parents, kids and young people. You can also report cases of cyber harm through their portal as well. And if you need, the QR code will take you to that site.
So yeah, this is the last slide of the official presentation, but we have a couple more things before we go. So many of you, obviously have a technical background, so you might want to look into controls that are of a more technical nature. And we've left these out of the presentation because, like we said at the start, the idea is that this can be delivered to a non-technical audience. So you can pick this up and you can deliver it to parent groups or school groups and things like that, to those parents and caregivers. So a non-technical presentation, but I'm sure you guys have got some stuff covered. And as I suggested earlier at the start of the talk, it would be great if anyone here is wanting to present something like this, or they've been asked to talk about something like this. This is a resource for you guys to go and grab and use. So you can access the talk at that QR code there. And if you're not quick enough, please reach out to us or hit us up in the hall. We've got the QR code and you can check it out. Yeah,
so you can download that presentation with the dinosaur QR code. If you do run it, and it would be great to hear how you went and any feedback. So if you want to reach out and touch base with either myself or Cam, that'll take you to LinkedIn. I'm not super awesome with LinkedIn, so say where you're from, otherwise I'll probably think you're some bot or something like that. But thanks for coming. I hope that's been interesting, and we'll let you get back to your day.
Thanks everyone.
Round of applause.